So now let's talk about the Genesis E5 curriculum framework. What is E5? It is really about focusing on applying core content in relevant and innovative ways. The components of E5 include economics, engineering, ethics, expression, and entrepreneurship. Those are areas that help us answer the common question, why should I learn this? So for instance, why learn math? Well, one of the reasons we suggest is that it's about economics and finance. Why is that important? Well, the top 1% of earners earn 20% of income in this country. The median wealth of white households is 20 times that of people of color. And that's not a number that's simply important to people of color. That's important to all people who want a society that is a little bit more equal, because when it's not, it creates a lot of strife and stress. And education is supposed to be the great equalizer. It's supposed to improve economic development for all communities and individuals. And yet, schools teach kids mostly to pass tests, to graduate and get good jobs. We never actually teach them about economics. Why is that? Well, Genesis, we want to teach our young scholars how to use math to understand finance and to hopefully learn how to build wealth. So one might ask, why learn science? At Genesis, we try to connect that question to the answer, engineering. STEM is very popular: science, technology, engineering, and math. But we've always taught science and math. The rest of STEM is really about what you apply to. And it's not for us about creating engineering projects. It's about a mindset. We're not trying to create engineers. Again, it's about a mindset. It's important because the top 20 jobs in the US are in STEM fields. And they've been telling us now that half of all high-paying jobs will require some amount of coding skill. So again, we ask scholars to learn science and math, but usually it's for facts and algorithms. What we have to do is help them figure out how to connect it to something bigger, something that gives them a mindset that clearly the world now appreciates. Again, it's not about being an engineer. It's the fact that most things now require engineering thinking. And so yes, our scholars will learn how math and science are used to engineer or create technology and solve big problems. So one might say, why study literature? I know that's a question I often remembered as a young person in school, because the things they had us read didn't quite always make sense to me. Books that I didn't care for. Well, at Genesis, we suspect that one of the reasons you should study literature is so that you can also study ethics. Public schools often struggle with chaos and disrespect. Suspension and expulsions almost have become a norm. We put in character education often as an add-on. The real question, though, is how can schools reinforce the values that parents teach and the kind of people our children are becoming in a way that's happening on a day-to-day basis? So at Genesis, that's why we connect the study of literature to ethics, because our kids are going to have to read. They read in every educational institution in this country. But we want to make sure that they connect what they read to a question of what is right and what is wrong through the lens of studying these characters that historically we may not have cared about. Well, we don't care now that you like the book as much as we care that you learn that what the characters do should reflect a little bit about life itself. So yes, our students will study classic literature, contemporary literature, religion, philosophy. Yes, all of that, because all of that will force them to think about right and wrong. We don't want to tell them as educators what's right or wrong. That's a parent's job. But we certainly want them to have to deal with the question. That's what makes literature powerful, that the discussions about life and what's right or wrong can occur in a safe place, but in a context of looking at it through the eyes of various characters, whether they're black, white, rich, poor. We want a diverse set so our kids can understand why might the world be the way that it is, so they can understand themselves, so they can understand the lives that people live, and then hopefully how to make a positive difference in their community. Why learn English or art or music? At Genesis, we think it's about expression. How do you use a language, art, and music to express an idea? Because communication skills and the ability to express an idea are highly desired in the marketplace and yet hard to find. So scholars should not just learn language to take a test or write a 5-paragraph essay. The essay that we never actually write outside of school. And they shouldn't do art to draw cute pictures or learn music to simply make pretty sounds. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. I have a child who I'm pretty sure really wants to be an artist, and I want that to be developed. But when you're talking about the study of something, having kids, every kid, whether they're artists or not, learn about art, music, or English, we want that to be about expression. So we want them to understand how language, how visuals, how sound can be used in innovative ways to affect the way others think and the way others feel, whether they become English masters or artists or musicians at all. So we want them to understand how people try to influence them, how commercials or advertisements try to change the way they think and feel. We want them to become intelligent and thoughtful about expression, both what they express and what others express. So yes, that's why we want our young people to learn English and to understand how art and music are used, not for a test, but for expression. And why study social studies? There are lots of reasons, but we like to think that one of the reasons is to better understand economics. Now, economics shows up before with math, but we think it's important here as well. Why? Because most major world and U.S. challenges are driven by economics. I think we all know that. Climate change, terrorism, world hunger and disease, race and income gaps, health, incarceration, education and family stability gaps. All of those are economic concerns and are driven by economics. And yet, how often do schools address these important topics? And certainly, how often do they deal with them through an economic lens? Rarely. Usually kids learn facts and they learn figures and statements and they memorize them for a test and they move on. But helping them see history and society through a lens of economics creates something that makes every discussion connect to another discussion. So yes, at Genesis, scholars will use economics to understand the why in terms of the way the world is and how to change it for the better. And then the final E that brings it all together is entrepreneurship. Why do we feel that's important? Well, entrepreneurs are about 10% of U.S. workers, but they own 30% of the nation's wealth. And yet, most kids are taught to and encouraged to get good jobs, not to create them. Our scholars will use all that they learn to pursue their passion and their vision, not somebody else's. We want scholars to develop and market their own creations. Now, let's be clear here. We don't believe that every kid has to start a business in order for this to be an important thing. In fact, for our earliest scholars, even in kindergarten and first grade, who we're pretty sure may not start a multinational corporation at the age of 5 or 6, we still want them to understand that whatever they do actually has an audience. That even if their teachers and parents are the ones looking at their work, they should think of them in a way as customers. Customers who are, again, looking at their work, evaluating their work in a certain way so that kids understand, hey, what I do isn't just for a grade. It's not just for a test. There are people who are actually looking at it and they can be moved or affected by what you create. And so we want our kids to understand, how can I make something better for my teacher? How can I make it better for my parent? Again, not for a grade, but because what you create is an expression of you. And as they get older, we do want the standards to get a little higher in terms of what they create. But again, it's all targeted at the audience, the customer, whoever consumes their work. So they don't have to create a business, but they do have to create that mindset that says what I do for me outside of the educational arena may be a hobby. But when you're in class and you're creating for an audience. And if they take that into the real world, then they may start a business one day. But bottom line, we want them to understand that we expect them to create their own future and not wait for somebody else to create it for them. That's the entrepreneurial mindset.